Now, let me clarify something to you, based on the question already. Second element of death was caused by a criminal act of someone. Okay? Third, there was an unlawful killing of a victim by an act imminently dangerous to another and demonstrating a depraved mind without regard to human life.
Now may I ask a question? That's referring to second degree?
Yes.
For the law? Okay, and that was married. So intent can also be part for a second degree murder charge.
So, Mr. Walk with me. Can someone intentionally kill someone? Now, accidentally, intentionally, and it be second degree murder.
According to the law, which is right, yes.
Would you accept that that's the law?
Yes, I would.
Mr. Denmark,
Yes, sir.
could you give me something or an example of what you think may be second degree murder?
You know, in kind of regards to kind of like the psychology part, more of the fight situation, it was something, you know, you felt threatened, so you did it without thinking about it. Kind of like a fight or flight response.
So, what you're saying is it's intentional, but you didn't have time to sufficiently think about it doing it before you did it.
Yeah, like, I mean, if you were to rob like a convenience store, and your fingers on the trigger, and you squeeze by accident, oh, you know what I mean? That wasn't kind of in my way premeditated. That was kind of like a accident, theoretically. But yet, you intended to do it.
I think the word you're looking for is idiocracy. Would you agree?
Yes.
Mr. Blackadino,
Sir,
what do you think would be an example of second degree murder?
I was kind of on the same track with Mr. Denmark in a fight situation. Like, let's say, I could be wrong, but if you're, let's say, hanging out with a buddy, and you guys have a conversation, things start to get heated, and you know, physical altercation starts to break out. I believe, you know, in the heat of the moment, something could happen where you two are fighting, and something goes wrong. You could hit him or her a certain way, and that could end that person's life. You know, you were, when you were fighting them, you had the intention to harm. Possibility that through the altercation, you could have said, you know what, I'm just going to forget everything I know about this person, and now I have to kill. That's also possible.
Now, where do you stand with what you heard when it comes to an example of second degree murder? Can you give me something you think?
For me, the most important, there was no planning involved at all. It was just the first of a moment.
So it can be intentional,
It could be.
but it has to be something in my planning and rest. Yes, we're here with the group.
The way that I'm looking at it, because you've been asking for illustrations, the way I'm looking at it with the idea of somebody's going in to rob a place and you carry a gun with you because you figure that'll scare somebody enough that they'll give up the money. And then the person being robbed starts to defend themselves and starts a fight with it, and you end up using the gun. You didn't bring the gun in with the intent of really trying to harm anybody, but to scare them. But you ended up shooting them and killing them. So there's the intent of scaring them, but not the intent of killing them.
Mr. Wick, you agree or disagree with what the gentleman just said?
Well, I believe that it would, if it's not planned out, if it's not, we talked about premeditated, it could be just a momentary thing, but even the second degree, which you read, could be a momentarily intent. But there's other things involved as far as situations, what's happening, as far as rage or anger, and talk a lot about self-defense. There is a difference.
Mr. Wilder, I guess you feel that you look at me like you have something you want to say, am I right?
I have a potential example, but having said that, I'd want to hear or read again side by side the definitions, these two definitions of murder. But
Just so you know, you will. Okay, perfect.
where you've asked for an example, you read off what the definition was, and the thing that came to my mind was a crime of passion,
Okay.
as an example. Make the assumption for a moment that I am an insanely jealous person. And I come home early from work one day and I see you in bed having sex with my wife. And then I draw my weapon and kill you.
Understood.
That, in my mind, is not premeditated. It is from a deranged, I forget the term that you used,
Wait, Mom.
depraved or disturbed mind. That may be an example of second-degree murder.
Thank you. Mr. Wilder, do you agree or disagree with what the gentleman just said?
I
In
definitely
terms of
agree.
the example in general.
The scenario that he said, I definitely agree. And I'm glad you brought up the second degree murder, because when you brought up the first degree, I'm thinking, well, every murder is a first degree because you said there's no time frame. So I'm saying, that's what's in my mind, not knowing the legal.
Well, the prosecution read you the definition for first degree murder and for premeditation. So that's already out there. And now we're talking about second degree murder, just to continue this position. But I will say this. The law generally says premeditation, to find premeditation is the issue to the jury. In other words, there is no fine line that says that what's above this is premeditation, that's below this it isn't.
Right.
That's exactly why we're having this conversation. Those picked on the jury, when considering premeditation, it is up to you, based on the evidence, whether or not it's premeditation. See why we're having this conversation?
That can clarify
Because if it's
what I
not
was thinking.
premeditated, then this is another one.
Right.
Joan,
Yes, sir.
can you think of an example of second degree murder with
Well, I think what I've been listening to, there are a lot of scenarios that are somewhat similar. You walk into the house and you're stopped, engaged with some other person, or you went to a grocery store to rob it with no intent of harming anyone, let things go badly. Or it's sort of it seems to me the difference between the 1 and 2 is that you're not really making a choice into you're responding to the immediate situation, and you're not thinking clearly. You're not making an assessment and making a choice. You're just reacting to your emotions.
Hypothetical. Would you agree with me or disagree that the faster something happens, the more likely there is that it's second degree murder? And the slower something happens, the less likely it's second degree murder?
That would make sense to me, yes.
I noticed you were nodding your head.
Say that again?
Well,
Barnes, I
yeah,
noticed you were nodding your head. Why was that?
because I completely agree. To me, when I think about premeditation, it's thought out. That's the definition of premeditation. And I think with second degree murder, it's more of the intent of what happened.
Mr. Lamont, I noticed you were nodding your head too. Can you tell me what you're thinking?
I'm just thinking about the different scenarios, and I could agree with what they're saying with the different ideas about, crime of passion, just a split second. You're not even, it's almost like you're not even thinking. You're just reacting to emotion, and, I could do those kind of things.
Can you provide an example to clarify my answer, as I was a little ambiguous? Where I was going with that is an example of second degree would be if I was to want to intimidate someone per se, drive to their house. I know what I'm doing. I've premeditated that part. and I'm going to shoot up their house, not intending on killing. The killing is not premeditated. I shoot up their house. In the process, I kill them. That would be second degree. Whereas if I drive to that house, and I'll change the circumstance a little. I'm going to intimidate them. I knock on the front door, but I'm maybe just want to intimidate them. They come out, an altercation ensues. I get mad at that person, draw a gun, and I go, I'm going to kill this person. 2 seconds before I pull the trigger. By the definition of the law, there's no time frame. That can be considered premeditation. The difference is the proving beyond a reasonable doubt that I had the intent to kill during the course of that action rather than just being irregardful of human life. You're shooting, discharging a firearm anywhere where there's people is in disregard of human life. In my mind, it could be an evil intent. That would be where I was going with my answer.
And Mr. Kirby, just to flesh that out a little
Yes.
bit, part of second-degree murder requires evil intent.
Correct.
That's just, you can't murder someone unless there's intentional act. Right? The key is it premeditated or not?
Correct.
And as you pointed out, it's really wild to involve an individual fact.
Correct.
Now, Mr. Wine, what do you think about what Mr. Kirby just said?
I don't know if I agree with that, with his scenario. I mean, in my mind, if you enter into a situation where you didn't plan on killing someone, or, but you did during the altercation or during that connection, that would be, in my mind, the definition of second-degree murder. There wasn't forethought and plan to it. However, if you go into a situation saying, I am going to kill this person, then to me that would be more of the definition of premeditated. And I don't know if I could set a timeline for that.
You make a valid point. Why did you say that?
Why do I say what?
You said if you go into a situation that I'm going to kill this person, that's more premeditated murder. Why do you say that? What makes
That's
that?
because you're thinking about, this is the act I'm going to do.
So that's very different than when someone potentially reacts to the situation. As
Correct.
other people say. Mr. Dye, I noticed you're not in your head. What were you thinking?
To me, did I get up that morning and carry a gun? Okay, yeah, I did that. Did the situation drive me to shooting the person, or did I go out intentionally thinking about shooting someone? Okay, and I know premeditation can be that quick because of the way the mind works, but I didn't plan on killing you at all, just the actions that took place made me react in a certain way.
Okay. Mr. Minerva, let's expand on what Mr. Berry just said. Is it possible, and I'm picking on you because you're a law enforcement, you know that why I'm
I realize that.
But let's talk about it. Let's say hypothetically, as Mr. Berry pointed out, someone carrying a gun. Does that make it more likely to be premeditated because they have a gun and then something bad happened later?
Not necessarily.
Do you agree or disagree with the way Mr. Berry characterized this event?
Let me give you my thought. It's spontaneous. It's spontaneous as a result of an action. In my example would be a domestic disturbance between a husband and wife, girlfriend, boyfriend. They gets out of hand, and a weapon is, whether it be a knife, a gun, in the hand, and one person dies as a result of that disturbance.
Mr. Wilson, what are your thoughts on the second-degree murder constitution? Can you give an example that you think?
I'm sticking with the fight. Two people get in a fight, and then one of them is dead. The intent wasn't there to kill, but to just have a dispute, but got out of hand, went too far. That's what I'm sticking with.
Robert, can you give an example?
Well, as to the blatant disregard of human life, gentleman commits a crime. He's trying to escape. He don't care who's in his way. He's going to escape. If he's carrying a gun, knife, whatever. And somebody gets killed in the process, he has no regard for human life. He just wants to get out of there. That's second degree. It may not be premeditated because you didn't plan it out, but you're trying to escape from somewhere, take any means possible to get out.
Mr. Trujillo, what do you think? Can you give an example?
So I have a pretty good example that comes to mind. I'm driving down the road in my truck. Some guy cuts me off. I jump out of my truck. I happen to have a gun on me. Guy starts screaming and yelling at me. And in the heat of the moment, I kill him. That puts me in a situation that I would consider to be, second degree murder. I didn't plan on the guy cutting me off. I didn't plan on the altercation. It took place and not thinking through clearly. Your emotions get the best of you. And, I think that would be a pretty good example of, like a second degree murder situation. And I could probably even see it, it seems to happen a lot too, it seems like.
You give a very good example. I want to work with you on that. I'm not disagreeing with you, but I'm just having a conversation. Some people might say you got cut off, no big deal. The fact that you got out of the truck with the gun shows reflection. What do you think about that idea?
Good, what if I had it on me? Because I have my carry permit and I didn't, I'm wearing it. So, I wasn't really thinking about the gun when I get out of the truck, but this guy's coming at me now, and one thing leads to another, and now, oh man, I got my, and I forgot I had the gun maybe, just because I have a concealed carry. Could be the scenario.
Very good point. Mr. Buzz, what do you think about this? And I think second degree murder, the different examples you've heard about, any one of them stuck with you?
Well, a number of them I agree with. Passion one, unintentional, the fight. But the fight thing might be taken one step further. Let's say we were fighting with our fist, but I had training, fight boxing training. But we're getting into a barroom brawl per se, and I hit him, and he died. I didn't intend, but I had training. How much did that training have a play in the ability to kill someone? But I didn't intend, we're fighting. And then, where does, in a sense, who started it, the aspect of self-defense. But yet I had the training, or maybe he damaged me and killed me. Even though I had the training and he didn't, he got a lucky punch. But I think it's the intent thing, the intent, the ability, the intent. You have to look at all of it. But first degree murder is the intentional. Second degree murder would not be the intentional, but it happens, but it's greater than self-defense.
Mr. Strella, any of these examples been true with you?
And like he said, I agree with a few of them. The passion one, getting caught off, just because you get out of the car with a gun. Now, if you get out of the car with a gun, wielding a gun, yeah, you might, that's not right. But if you do have a carry permit, or if it's on you, it's not intentional. You just happen to have it on you. And I believe second degree murder versus, first degree,
second degree is more of a reaction to a situation versus, you know, you knowing that I'm going to do this. You know, you're driving down the street. You're not driving down the street thinking that you're going to, okay, I left the house today. I'm going to wait for somebody to cut me off, and then I'm going to do it like the OK Corral and go crazy. But it's just a reaction of a situation.
Ms. Wells, I'm going to get you. Ms. Wells, I noticed you nodding your head when Mr. Scarlett was talking. Is it something particularly you were agreeing with or disagreeing with? When the gentleman behind you was talking, I noticed you nodding your head. Did you have a thought you'd like to share with me?
Well, I think just because you have a permit to carry a gun doesn't mean that you should be able to get out of your vehicle and wave it. I mean, he said, you know, you get out of the car waving the gun. I mean, that's kind of ridiculous. I think if you got out of the car, your gun is somewhere on you. I think first you would have an argument, and then would have to escalate to the point where, for some split second, when you're totally not thinking, in the heat of the moment, maybe the other person gets aggressive, and you don't know what to do. Then you pull your gun. Don't get out of the car waving the gun.
Mr. DeVito, did you raise your hand?
Yeah, I just want to clarify that, number one, I wasn't really trying to inject myself. It was just a scenario that came to my mind.
No one is that you I'm asking you as you did. I'm asking you to kind of think maybe about things that could happen. Don't expect any of them actually to things that would happen. No problem.
No. We just want to permit that he leaves first today, so he gets to go first. Just kidding, sort of.
Yeah, I'm a little bit confused about the premeditation issue. If, in one of the scenarios, somebody has committed a crime and they know that there's not after him and he grabs his gun with the intent of, I'm getting at him no matter what, is that not? And then in the course of just, you know, somebody gets in his way, is that premeditation because he picked up that gun knowing that he was going to protect his own life over, you know, anybody who got in his way? Or is that just...
That's the question for you as a judge. Because remember what I said, the law says premeditation. I'm dumbing it down. You'll get the full instruction if you pick it. But the law says that determining premeditation is in the hands of the judge. It's subjective.
So it's not necessarily targeted at a person. Premeditation doesn't necessarily mean someone is targeted, it just means someone has thought in advance. Or is that up to me as well?
Let me put it this way. I don't want to categorize it, but you remember the instruction that was read to you earlier on premeditation?
Yes.
And really that's the law. And you have to follow that instruction and determine whether you think a particular set of facts fits premeditation. As you're seeing, different people feel differently about that. Some people think it's outright planning in advance. Some people think it's maybe can be done very quickly. It depends on you as a juror, and then collectively the jury as a whole. That's why we're having this conversation. Okay.
All right.
So it wouldn't be right for me to answer that for you because if you're pitched to the juror, that's your decision to make. Remember, we're being brutally honest. We're talking about what we really feel, and I'm not going to try to paint your mind with my opinion because my opinion is irrelevant. I'm not on the jury. Okay?
All right.
Now, let me come back down. Ms. Codfoot,
Yes.
Cameron Codfoot, do you
Yes.
have an example if you think was fit second-degree murder?
Second degree murder to me will be not the attempt to kill someone, but it could be self-defense. You didn't mean to hurt the person, but unfortunately this person died. And First degree murder to me is when you plan to tell who, where, and when. That to me would be intent to have that first degree.
Now let me bring that out a little bit. Legally, second degree murder is an intentional act.
Okay.
Okay?
Yes.
You understand that?
Yes.
Okay. So if someone shoots someone intending to hurt them,
Yes.
intending to fire the shot,
Yes.
you can have second degree murder. There has to be intent to commit a crime.
Yes.
You can't accidentally commit a murder. Okay?
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Governor.
I know my example earlier was the example of a fight. I know I used the term like if you were in a fight with a buddy. Now, even if it was a stranger, and let's say you were in a bar, you guys get into an altercation, you happen to break a bottle, and you stab that person. I mean, even though you might not have planned on going to the bar, getting into a fight, the fact that it still happened and you happen to take it upon yourself to break a bottle, stab that person, I feel like that could still be second degree murder.
Mr. Webb, do you agree with what Mr. Webb just said, or do you have a different example?
I do agree with what you said. The example that I would have is, I would guess a few people have heard in Sunrise, Florida, the gentleman who mutilated his girlfriend. The fact that he waited until his girlfriend passed out from the alcohol and then began to mutilate her, for me, that is first degree. Now, I believe if they were in the heat of the moment, I believe those people heard that she shouted her ex-husband's name twice. That happened right then and there. They began an argument, and then he might have choked her or something like that. I believe that, to me, would have been second degree, because it was the heat of the moment, and his emotions took over at that point. However, how he waited until she passed out to then turn into a monster instead, to me, that would be first degree.
I understand the fact. Mr. Colon, I know that you cannot do that. What are your thoughts?
I agree. Several people make good points. Seems to be a common theme of most people think it's based on reactionary response. And another theme I see is emotional state of mind. Sometimes you might not be able to think clearly, which may allow a longer time frame than usual to say, how can I say it? In that emotional state, say 5 seconds wouldn't be enough to clearly gather your thoughts because there's too much going on, whereas if you were clear-minded, there'd be plenty of time to think. If I shoot this gun, he's going to die. You know, so I agree with both emotional state and reactionary responses.
For the most part, the example she used, sometimes I feel like people can just kind of stew on something and snap. Pretty sure we've all been in that situation where we're in the shower and thought of the perfect comeback to something somebody said to us 8 years ago. I think it just in that guy's situation, the person's comeback was in the other room, and I just saw the headlines. I didn't read anything about the case, but I mean, he could have just stewed over it for a while and eventually just snapped and didn't have any premeditation to it. Kind of a little crazy.
Okay. Magwood, do you have an example? If you think this second degree murder, or if you don't, if someone has already talked to you?
For second degree murder, I agree, and someone has a reactive personality. If they in fear, of fight or flight, defending themselves. I believe emotion has a lot to do with it. Some people don't have that the ability to think about their actions before they act. And I believe that second degree murder can fit into that.
for what I gather for the law for first-degree murder, perhaps even if it is second, before there has to be a point at which that person considers the option, thinks about it, and then decides I'm still going to go through with that. They intentionally completed what they intended to do versus stopping and saying, I shouldn't do that.
So, either one, I'm not sure how to get it correctly. I think you've done the situation we're approaching now, I might be second degree murder. That was the telling.
Definitely if they snap because they're not thinking clearly just through their thought process of maybe I shouldn't do this, or I know that if I continue on and go through with this, I'm going to intentionally kill someone.
I understand what you're talking about. Agree. Yes. Do you agree with what Ms. Magwood has said?
Somewhat. There's been a lot of examples. I don't know that I could articulate a scenario. I certainly understand it and then follow the law and deciphering which is which. I just wouldn't be comfortable throwing out a scenario because I don't know the law.
Okay. Oh, that's fine. Mr. Bush, do you have an example that you think is second degree murder? If you don't, that's okay.
Okay.
Do you have any fellow jurors that you've heard from that you might agree with? And tell me what they said.
The gentleman that shared, can you hear me? Okay. The gentleman that shared the story about the domestic violence, that it escalated, to me it sounded like a second-degree murder. It wasn't premeditated. It wasn't planned, and by planned doesn't mean like it had to be planned 2 hours. It could have been 1 minute, 1 second before, and it just escalated into a death. So that makes sense to me.
Ms. Smith, do you have an example that you can think of that is second-degree murder?
Nothing different. I think the one that sounds the most to me like it, without reading the law again, would be someone maybe committing a robbery and the person they're robbing pulls a gun and they shoot them. I don't know. Could be wrong.
Ms. Fontana, do you have an example that you think of this second-degree murder?
Okay. No one's home, someone breaks into the home with a weapon. You accidentally walk into the house, an altercation happens, and they take the weapon out and shoot you, kill you, dead, whatever.
All of you. What Ms. Fontana was just talking about, other instances, I want to clarify something because you know that just for your own knowledge and moving on. In Florida, there was a component of first-degree murder called felony murder.
Called what?
And there was a component of first-degree murder called felony murder. Felony murder says, in a nutshell, that I am in the commission of a felony. And during the commission of the felony or in flight from the felony, someone gets killed. I'm criminally liable for that death. And it's what it's murder. So, some of you gave examples like that, but I want to make sure you realize in the state of Florida, felony murder doesn't let you find second-degree murder if the felony was taking place or the person who committed the felony was fleeing from the felony or leaving the felony and someone died. Okay? Doesn't change your viewpoint, but I want to make sure that's clear. That's the felony murder statute. Now, let's switch gears a little bit. I want to talk to all of you a little bit about eyewitness testimony. Particularly what I want to talk about is the validity, the accuracy of eyewitness testimony. Now, Mr. Kirby, I'm going to come back to you, okay? In a general sense, someone is telling you something that they've seen or heard, how do you look at them to determine if you think they are being both honest and accurate?
I can attempt to determine whether or not they're being honest about what they think they saw, going mainly off of nonverbal communication or body language, micro-expressions, things of that sort. Now, accuracy is subjective to the person telling it. They may think that they're 100% accurate because I was there and I saw it. However, it's skewed by the perspective. So the only way I can really judge accuracy in that sense is by comparing what they're saying to whatever facts or evidence I have at hand to see if there's a higher probability that what they're saying is in line with what else I have to compare it to. I can't just say, if a person could be telling 100% truth in their mind that a person was wearing a black shirt. It could have been dark blue. If I have a picture that says could be the suspect, where it's dark blue in the picture, and everything else about that picture, and I have another person that's saying it's dark blue, well, they're not being 100% accurate, but they could be thinking that they're accurate and honest. So that's the comparison that had to take place.
So you would agree with me that a person can be 100% honest about what they're telling you and be wrong?
Correct.
Mr. Morgan, what do you think about it?
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. I would look at level of detail provided in the description. I'd also look at the state of mind and the antecedent events for the witness. Like if they were under stress at that time and they were ducking for cover, then they might have a less accurate vision of what had happened during the incident.
Mr. Ryan, what do you think about that cognitive testimonies?
Well,
what the gentleman has said, if you have a different perspective?
I agree, and I understand that everybody has a different perspective on how they look at things. For the example he used, I could be wearing a black shirt, and someone thinks it's dark blue. It's just how that person looks at their perception, basically their perception, and also to see if they're telling the truth of their body language, if how I'm speaking to you and looking at you, or if someone's looking down. That's another thing to see if what they're saying is credible.
Can you think of anything beyond what you told me about language that you would look to determine what is being told that?
If there's evidence, proof, say for example, if there's a security camera or video of that coincides with what the person is saying as well.
Mr. Grappagino, what do you think?
I think everything that Mr. Purdy said pretty much is exactly the same train of thought that I had. Micro expressions as well as body language. So I mean, sometimes that can prevent it can cause some of an issue. Like for example, I have a cousin who, even though he could be telling the truth, if he's questioned a certain way, he starts to laugh very nervously. So sometimes that can be unreliable. I guess I would just look more for consistencies in stories as well as if what they say coincides with the evidence.
What do you think? When we're talking about eyewitness testimony, what would you look for to make sure that the witness is a person telling you their version of events is both honest and accurate? Me? Oh, I'm sorry. I would base it on their, well, depends on who they are and what they do. So some people have certain training and can and are trained to observe and report. So in that case, I think I might give that a little more credence because that's their training. But however, it would also be based on the physical and on the physical evidence and any other evidence that's presented that supports the testimony. So I would look to see that there was a consistent story through the entire narrative.
Now, what if there's an inconsistent story? How do you reconcile that?
Well, then I'd have to question where the inconsistencies are, and I would have to come to a reasonable conclusion whether or not this is significant enough to, keep, as a doubt to me, or is it something that is not as significant to cause me to change my view?
Slightly different example. Let's say we have two witnesses come through the door. One is a law enforcement officer. Pick a number, 25 years of experience. 50 years old, been on the force since he was 25, whizzing through the ranks, we know he knows what he's doing. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Then you have Joe Blow walk through the door. Plain old Joe Blow, lives in the neighborhood, nothing special. You have an ordinary job, live an ordinary life, and no special training. Let's say the two of them disagree about what happened, but both of them were in a position to see the event. How are you going to reconcile that?
Well, then it would come down to the evidence and timelines and what happened in order to make that determination. Like I said, one's a professional that knows how to present testimony. The other person is not. That doesn't make what they've seen any less valid or less insignificant in my mind. It would just be that I would have to see how each one pertains to what's presented with the entirety of the case.
Just so we're clear, would you be more likely to give a law enforcement officer more credibility because of her training? Or would you look at what's presented to you and make a decision?
No, I don't think I'd give them more credibility. Again, I would base it, I would expect them to be more articulate, is I guess what I'm thinking. And so I'm basing it on, again, the testimony versus the evidence, and see how things line up. And, that's how I would base it on.
Understood. Ms. Locke, what do you think about the eyewitness testimony? Particularly, we have two different people, one with obviously specialized training, a lot of it, someone without it. And they testified differently. But we believe they're both being honest. They're both married to what they think they saw. How are you going to determine what the actual version is?
I would give both equal credibility and just go back to the facts and see the personality and probably go with my own box a little bit.
Okay, that's good. Mr. Tribe, your version, your thoughts on the eyewitness conflict?
Eyewitness testimony, as I've understood it, you can have both giving correct testimony because they're looking from different angles and they're seeing things different. When something, even as a trained observer, when you're seeing things, it doesn't necessarily you saw everything your mind thought you saw. Because a lot of times, to bring in another example, magic, the way that magic is done is because our mind is expecting to see a certain thing, and then we don't, we're fooled in that respect. The mind can be fooled very easily, whether it's something that you were seeing was black or it was red or green or yellow. Sometimes it's because of what your mind was expecting to see. Also, even if you have like a recorder going on visually, that can be interpreted different ways also. So it would have to be a point, I don't think I would give more credence one way or the other, even though I understand that the officer is more of a trained observer, but I'd have to put all the evidence together to be able to piece what does the circumstances come out to be at that particular point.
Mr. Wick, agree with Mr. Wick.
Good point. I believe that you have to go back to the evidence and the facts, because when you have two different views, even though there's two different people looking at the same thing differently, the facts are the facts. And so you have to go back to the evidence at hand, because the two witnesses, I don't want to say they cancel each other out, but there's confusion there. So you have to not disregard it, but you have to go back to the facts. You have to, and weigh it on that.
Mr. Lamar?
Yes.
Your thought?
I agree with both of them. Also, depending on the two witnesses, they could both see from different angles things that are going on, and one might not have seen something happen, you know, like if they're standing in the way, like there's something obstructing part of their view. And I think when it comes to, if they are saying two different things, you have to look at the evidence to see what looks like is more accurate to what happened.
More? What do you thought?
I agree with all three of them. One person thinks something else, the other might have been thinking that here or that.
Robert, particularly on the conflict in the evidence between plain law enforcement and someone who is not. How would you reconcile that they both were in a position to see the event, but their testimony disagreed with each other?
Immediately, I would start trying to look for supporting evidence, testimony, or testimony and evidence that would support or refute either one of the witnesses' testimonies in this example. Having said that, if nothing is available, absolutely nothing, and I have to weigh, as a trained observer myself, I would have to side with the trained observer. Or at least give that testimony a little more weight.
Now, just so I'm clear, because I'm putting words in my mouth, are you giving the trained observer more weight just because they are a trained observer?
Yes. Yes. But again, I'm going to be listening very carefully to what they say, how they say it, and to other information. For instance, if there was an activity at that podium of some kind, and I'm standing from this angle, and I can see that clearly, whereas the gentleman standing over there sees it from that angle, he may not see what's going on this side of that podium. And I would have to try to recognize that.
Now, back to the trained observer, I want to make sure I'm understanding you correctly. Are both witnesses starting at the same place?
Absolutely. Absolutely, yes, they would.
I thought so. I just wanted to make sure. They're both starting at the same place, and you're saying in a certain situation, you may give more credibility to the trained observer after you've had a chance to critique their testimony.
Yes, sir.
Now, Mr. Dunbar, any thoughts on the eyewitness conflict issue?
I mean, it's everywhere. I mean, it's all perception. I mean, biggest thing, watch a baseball game. Every inning, the pitcher, catcher, argue with the umpire, batter, coaches argue with the umpire. It's all for perception. I mean, there's pros and cons to everything. One side of the story says, hey, look outside. The other one says, oh no, I think it was a little further outside. Well, the only way to figure out is to look at everything as a whole, you know, gather the facts, you know, the proof that's before you, and then compare the timelines. You know, and you see which one basically falls in line, you know, the teeth match the most with the story.
I noticed you're not in the head now.
With what just about everybody else has said. It's perception, it's angles, where you're located at the scene. One person can be absolutely truthful based on what they saw, for example, and another person based on where they're standing, they may have seen or not seen something due to just where they were placed at that situation. So both can be telling the truth and have a different testimony.
Jones, I noticed you looking at Mr. Bernard when you were talking. Would you agree with what he was saying, or do you think something else?
Well, I believe, obviously, I believe that you have to bring all the testimony in. You have to corroborate everything that you can. If none of that exists, then you have to consider whether or not there's any history. I think people go into a situation such as observing a crime scene, as an example, with their own preconceived expectations. If the police officer had had significant run-ins with the defendant, we might expect him to be doing something wrong. The community member may also have that kind of experience, so they go into it being as honest as they can, but bringing their own perspective to it. I watched a video one time on eyewitness testimony, and they had people watch a certain scene, and then as they were watching the scene, they had people in like a penguin suit walking through the scene. More than half the people didn't see the penguin. Now, a full-size person didn't see them walk through the scene. So I think it's possible that depending on where you're focused, you will see one thing, and 5 feet away, you will see something else. So I think it's common sense, it's from the juror, and bringing all of that together and making the best assessment that you can.
You're going up a very important part, focus. Is it possible that I can completely focus on you, that I can miss something that you do?
Oh, absolutely. I've raised my hand a couple of times when you were here with me. Or maybe you ignored me. Yes, I think that's very possible.
I want to come down to Ms. Gettler. Ms. Gettler, I noticed you perhaps not in your facial expression changed a little bit when different people were talking. I'm curious to know your thoughts on what we're discussing right now.
Well, I agree with what everybody here is saying, and I agree with her too. Different people look at things in different perspectives, and so you have to weigh everything, and you would have to also take the facts and the evidence into consideration when you're looking at those things. Come to your...
Would you agree with what has already been said by Ms. Jones, that you can be completely focused on me and miss something that I'm actually doing?
Absolutely.
Ms. Joy, did you going to say something?
You know, the frame of mind. I mean, what time, okay, this happened. Incident happened. Did the officer just come off a 16-hour shift versus one that might be wide awake? So the one that just finished a double may perceive it different, or maybe not see it as clearly, because in his frame of mind, he's tired.
Mr. Minogue.
Yes, sir.
I'm curious to know your thoughts on the potential conflict between the law enforcement officers and someone else. How would you reconcile that if you were not positioned?
Since nothing happens in slow motion, we see a person may blink and not see something, and your mind fills in what happened. Also, after something happens, everybody's mind goes over it and over it and over it, no matter what it is. Did I see this? Did I see that? And, no, go ahead. Sure.
You brought up a very important part. After an event happens, people ponder it and they dwell on it. Does that agree?
Of course.
Would you agree that after an event happened and ponder and dwell on it, your recollection of the event may change?
Sure.
Be a lot of nodding heads. What do you think about that?
Say the second part again, I'm sorry. No, could you repeat the second part for me?
After you ponder something and you reflect on it, sometimes your recollection changes. Some people that happen. I'd like to know your thoughts on it. For example, on September 15th, I hit the podium with my hand. I thought about it, and then I said, well, I didn't hit it, I grazed it. What do you think about that mental reflection process? If what I said the first time would likely be accurate, or what I said 2 weeks later after I've had time to ponder and think about it?
I would think what happened at that moment, because that's when it happened. When you go back and reflect, your mind can play tricks on you. Did I actually hit it?
Okay. Mr. Wilson, what do you think about what Mr. Minerva just said?
I agree with him that sometimes you do something, it's right there on your mind, then a couple days later, it begins to escalate. Oh, I did this. So at the present moment, what went on goes back. You can go back and forth.
So if I understand you correctly, what I initially remembered is probably the most accurate.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Mr. Glauber, what do you think about that?
Go both ways.
Okay. Why do you say that?
Some people are more focused. You know, they're going to stick to their guns, and other people, they want to reflect on it and overthink it.
If they're reflecting on it over and over, and their recollection of it starts to change, which one do you think is more accurate, the initial remember or what they remember later?
I would think the earliest recollection.
Sabito, what do you think?
One thing comes to mind, because these are going to be witness testimony. I'm curious how much interaction between the defense and the prosecution questioning that witness is going to bring. It's going to, you're going to bring them in and out of scenarios, and so I think I have to use logic and determine after hearing both, sides of that witness being questioned, and maybe multiple witnesses in that particular line of questioning, I have to put the most believable or logical scenario together based upon all that information. Is what I'm kind of thinking is going to be my responsibility.
Ms. Sinnott, I noticed you were nodding your head when you were talking. What are your thoughts?
As a teacher, that's part of what we have to do is assess what we're being told. I've also learned that recollection can be biased. There's a fight in a courtyard at lunch, and the kids come running in and tell me about the fight, and one of the boys in the fight was best friends with the person telling me, and he's telling me, well, it wasn't his fault. And then somebody else comes in and who's best friends with the other person, well, no, he was the aggressor, not him. And there's your side of the story, and then the other side of the story, and somewhere in between is really the truth. So I always say there's three sides to every story. There's one side, and somewhere in the middle is that truth. And as teachers, we have to learn to assess and evaluate, what's coming at us from here, what's coming at us, and then kind of make our own decisions somewhere in between.
Vaughn, I noticed you were nodding your head when Mr. Sinnott was talking.
Well, I mean, I completely agree with her, especially when it comes to, for instance, like high school fights like that. You would have the aggressor, like she said, who, yes, blah, 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 they did not do it, somebody else started the fight.
and then you could have the other side say, no, they started the fight, and then somewhere in the middle is the complete truth.
No. What are your thoughts on this conversation?
I think I'm on the opposite side. The fact that when an incident occurs, and with me in particular, I'm hyped up and I'm scattered, and I don't feel like I articulate what I want to do or say at that time. But when I sit down and calm down for a second, and then I reflect on what I want to say and what I saw and what I felt like I saw, then I feel like I understand it a little better. So I'm kind of a little bit on the other side.
Now, Ms. Love, how much time are we talking about? Right after it happened? Or later? Days later? Weeks later?
Well, it depends on the situation. And that's really a hard question. In the scenario that is being occurred, it would be tough. I don't know that I can answer that honestly. I think once I calm down, then I think I could realize and put all the pieces together, and then articulate what I saw. Not to say that I didn't see it, I just don't think that I would articulate it correctly, or maybe as accurately.
Mr. Panache,
Yes, sir.
what do you think about this conversation?
Like she just said, and in my spare time, I referee youth and high school soccer. And we're trained that when there's an incident on the field, a fight, things like that, that as opposed to reacting right at that time, compose ourselves, because our adrenaline's rushing too. Compose ourselves, give us some thought as to what happened. We have to write a report on it. We have to report it to the state, and try not to do that in the quote-unquote heat of the moment. You asked her, though, how much time elapses. In my experience, again, just as a referee, the more time that goes on, the more the actual or the accurate events of what happened get skewed. So we tell our referees and myself, you don't want a lot of time to lapse, but just compose yourself and try to keep your emotions out of it when you're reporting.
Yes, sir.
You agree with Mr. Panache?
I do.
Do you have any other comments, perspectives you'd like to add to the conversation?
I think it all comes down to consistency.
And where would you look to find that consistency?
I mean, you have to listen very carefully and weigh, both eyewitness testimony. And like everyone's been saying, there's two sides to every story, and sometimes the truth really is only in the middle. But I think it comes down to consistency.
Thank you. Mr. Brooks, I'd like to know your topics on crime, your opinions on the topic. Crimes or weapons or determined in your idea and honor when you have a victim or conflict with a trained law enforcement officer telling you those or someone else. How would you reconcile that to figure out what is the truth here?
You've asked a simple question that has a very complex answer. There are so many factors that you could and probably should take into account. You look at body language, training skills, the situation that they're testifying about. A situation, for instance, you're a very soft-spoken person. Let's take testimony about the law you read at the start of the day. Those people down there might give a pretty reliable testimony. Us people up here, you might say something in testimony, but I wouldn't trust it very much. The person that would testify the best is probably the court reporter over there who has the assistance of sound system. So, again, if the bailiff is testifying on that, I would give that lady more credibility because the bailiff doesn't have the assistance.
understand.
Does that help?
Ms. Amos,
Yeah.
curious to know your thoughts on this topic.
Well, pretty much like what everyone has been saying, it just depends on facts and the evidence and just making sure that what they're saying matches up with everything. That's what I feel is most important, is just everything is just matching up and it's all consistent.
Okay. Now, what if it doesn't all match up? What if it's not all consistent? Then what do you do?
Gotta figure out which one makes more sense, which one is more reliable between the two testimonies.
Mr. Simmons, how would you try to reconcile the difference between the trained law enforcement officer and somebody else without that training, when they're both in a position to see the event, but they differ on what happens?
Okay. I've always grown up, there's three sides to a story. So, both parties is a story. The third part would be for me to determine, listening to both, treating both fairly, giving a honest judgment, reviewing the evidence, and to determine, based on the evidence, what the determination will be. So I'm not going to, give one credit over the other because it comes down to the evidence to conclude the third part of that story.
What are your thoughts on this topic?
Well, number one, you want to make sure that their original story matches up with now the event that they originally testified they saw, if it's still consistent, number one. I don't think necessarily that someone's credibility or eyewitness testimony should be more relevant than the other. But I also would want to make sure that it does match with evidence, number one. Number two, did both eyewitnesses see the event happen at the same time? Because even if you saw something 5 seconds after the other person, you could have saw something totally different. So again, I think that the consistency of the entire eyewitness testimonies has to be relevant.
So I want to make sure I understand you correctly. I believe I do. You're saying that you wanted the evidence in whole, right? Mm-hmm. And you want to see what gives me the most complete picture.
Yeah.
Am I understanding you correctly? Rather than taking each individual witness as just them,
exactly.
You want to piece it all together.
Exactly.
To see what story fits.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mr. Hayes, what do you think about looking at with or
I agree with her comments about the evidence having to match up with the eyewitness report. I don't necessarily feel that a lot of eyewitness reports are 100% reliable regarding what the side is. I don't necessarily think it's because anyone's trying to lie or deceive or anything, but someone on the other side touched on the subject of magic, and I feel like people try and fill in blocks to make their stories seem more reasonable. And an example would be if I were driving down a crowded parking lot and I passed a gentleman in a car, and he was arguing with someone outside of his window, standing by his front door. And then I drive by and I stop to pull into a spot and hear like a bang bang. And I look around, I turn around, and I see the guy that was originally in the car standing over him, and he bang bang bang, And then police comes and say, all right, well, they were arguing, saw them argue, he gets out of the car, shot him, right? Makes sense. I saw him shoot him, maybe somebody else did too. But what I didn't see was whether those first 2 shots came from inside the car or outside the car. I just assumed he got out of the car because I saw him get out of the car. So although I'm not trying to lie,
I added an element to the story that I didn't see happen.
Fair enough. Mr. Cologne, your thoughts? You agree with to the next?
Yes, I do. I believe it's very possible for people to fill in information that they didn't have and assume things like, for example, if I start doing this, you're going to assume it's me because I'm giving you the example. However, you can't see my feet, so it could be him. So if you gave a testimony, you could believe you're telling the truth by saying that I was the one kicking the wall. If she gave a testimony, she'd be telling the truth because she could see my feet and say that he's kicking the wall. So you'd always have to compare it back to the facts.
I'm going to move to the Did you follow what Mr. Cologne was saying over there? What are your thoughts?
I agree. It's very difficult this testimony to accurately relate the problem. So they can be 100% truthful in what they saw, but next gentleman is maybe
and another thing I'd like to ask you, if that happens, and you think it is good, and you've got how are you going to fund it? Not what to do, but what's for that?
That is going to be tough. I think eventually you get a sense of what they saw, even though they might have seen it a little differently. So you sort of have to go with that, what you sense they actually saw.
Mr. Parker, you had two witnesses, one the law enforcement officer, one not. Law enforcement officer has a lot of training and experience in his or her job. The other person just absolutely no guy like us. And they both in a position to see something, but they differ in their opinions on what happened. How are you going to determine what actually happened? What would you look for to figure out that? Now, just so I'm clear, I think I am. Is the law enforcement officer going to start off with more credibility with you just because you're the law enforcement officer? Or are you going to look at what both people said and then decide?
I would have to listen to both. I would have to listen to both before I make a final judgment or final conclusion.
Thank you. Chief, what are your thoughts on that?
I would not definitely like join law enforcement more. I would listen to both of their testimony and then match it with the evidence and see who is more consistent. And so matches up with the evidence and the facts.
If there's just two witnesses we have to pick from, then yeah, I agree with some of the other jurors that have to go back, look at some of the other evidences of the case and see what exactly line up with what witnesses said.
So you would be looking for something that's truly suitable that can help you figure out who's actually
Irrefutable?
Yeah, you boys are not the best, so it's really aspect of it. Let me give you an example. If we have an eyewitness that says, I went from Washington Street and I looked at the house of Washington. The other eyewitness says, I went to Washington Street, I looked at the house and the house of Davis. How do you figure out who's right about the color? Are you telling me you want to see if there's any other evidence that helps you figure out the color?
Right. As far as maybe was there evidence of
who is more accurate?
It's pretty tough, but I simply would, because the law enforcement has a position of trust, simply just give the law enforcement away. The local person is actually more active in law enforcement.
Mr. Grogan, do you agree or disagree with the statement?
Yes, I do agree with I believe that in certain cases, most likely, out of the two descriptions, the individual is maybe more reasonable or likely to be able to decide. Maybe something seems more unlikely in that situation. Maybe decide that there isn't much weight.
Mr. Watts, Mr. Scott?
My thoughts, take time.
And where's Law Sports Beach Del Rey? The only local chopper getting you breaking news first.
And every week I fill out discipline reports or behavior reports. And I've learned over the years that I'm an inventor. I always have a sticky note on my desk. I always have a little notepad with me because I don't trust my memory. I see things that happen in my classroom. A kid falls out of the chairs. It's playing from the window. I write down what I see. And if I don't make it to the computer to fill out that report till the end of the day, I may not remember 3 hours later. So I always write it down. But it doesn't mean that I got something. It just means that's what I saw, and that's what I noted at that time. But I know if I don't take note of it then, there's a greater chance that I'm wrong.
Let's say you make a note, John fell out of the bus, John didn't go well, at 9 o'clock in the morning. And you think about it throughout the day. And then at the end of the day, you think, John didn't fall out of the bus. I saw Bob push John. I didn't notice that before. I think I saw Bob push John. Now,
when you think about facts like that, a lot of times then you've got to talk to the students. And let's face it, sixth graders, if they're confronted with some kind of situation where they may feel like they're threatened, they don't believe you, I'm sorry, but a lot of sixth graders will lie. And so you can't take what they're saying as the gospel truth. So, I guess that's why they pay principals the big money, because eventually the problem gets sent down the road to them, and I don't have to worry about it. She'll make that decision one way or another.
I understand what you're saying. What are your thoughts on that? Well, what I started with was, let's say you have a law enforcement officer, 25 years of experience, work with security, very having observation. And we have a civilian who's a father to another person that's all about, doesn't have that training experience. So both in positions key in event. They both have different versions of what the event is. How do you determine, and they're both married to their lawyers. Can't shake hands, they swear up and down, they tell the truth, they both something to be dishonest, but they differ. How do you find the truth in that scenario? What are you looking for?
I'm sorry, what did you say?
I was listening to both of them and see if there was any consistency there, and then look at the evidence and see, go from there and try and fit the other, because somewhere in the middle there's going to be what actually happened. The only way you can do it.
Mr. Howard, what do you think?
I find that testimony, I used to keep a shit log.
was trained, I mean, I've been doing it for years. But it surprised me how much I found that didn't make sense 6 months later. And, I would have to go more with physical evidence than I would testimony. I mean, I'll take the testimony, listen to the testimony, but I want some physical evidence to verify.
So, I think I understand you, but I want to articulate. If you have physical evidence, pictures, for example, that tells you one name suited white. I'm not trying to be ridiculous.
I understand.
One name suited painted white. And you have a law enforcement officer that says one name suited painted beige. You know, why the picture of the law enforcement officer.
And how long ago was the picture taken? How long ago was he in the house?
Exactly why I asked you the question.
And in this case, we're talking about years.
This is exactly why I asked you the question. Because one of the relevant factors is that the picture captured the event as it looked at the time it took place.
Absolutely.
Let me switch gears slightly with you, Howard. I want to go back to talking about stuff that can be real. You're going to be talking about it over here. I haven't had a chance to talk about it. You got briefly, Mr. Howard, and you think of the event that can be real.
I think I would rather not. The reason being is I want to judge things when I hear them. I don't want to judge by other people's opinions. I'd rather wait if I am chosen and then do it there and be as honest as I can.
I respect that. Which one do you think about that? If you were comfortable coming up and giving me a brand?
Well, I've heard a lot of examples, like the car where you have an altercation on the road and somebody gets out of the car, the other person gets out of the car, and just physical. That I don't think you got out of your car in any way shoot someone. But if they approach you and you start feeling threatened, you may do that. That would be different.
Not being trained in the law and listening to all these explanations, it gets confusing. We've heard these different scenarios, and I can understand some of them, but I think I'd like to hear the definition that's going to be given to us that we have to act on. Pick a scenario.
I respect that. See, you have an example that you think this is a good.
I want to just say, with the car, you have to consider what's in the car, and then you carry it everywhere you go. So that way when you get out of the car, it's already on you, and you tend to forget about it. But then when you get in the heat of the moment, and you feel like your life is in danger, or whatever may happen, you pull it out and shoot. That's not premeditated murder in my eyes. It was just a reaction.
Mr. Watson, what do you think about what the lady said?
Personally, I think my mind is pretty good on first degree, so we've heard more about that. But with all the different examples being given, I probably need you to read that thing again for me before I could tell you what I think, because I'm really not sure.
Let me give you the three elements are within the bill. Element two, death was caused by the criminal act of someone. Element three, there was an unlawful killing of the victim by an act imminent in danger to another, and demonstrated as a clear crime without regard to the other. And then the law goes on to say, an act is imminent in danger and demonstrated as a clear crime if it was an act of serious attack to that loved one. A person of good judgment will know reasonably certain to kill before you should probably harm somebody. Two, it is done with still will, hatred, spite, what you doing that. Three, is a substance, is a practice, indicate that you just need to see you. That is the law. That is the rule. Now, having heard that, if we think in the example that will demonstrate and get human life and the very
I think in that, you would be talking about kind of heat of the moment sort of thing where somebody got so angry, so upset that they just have nothing in their mind except hurting and killing somebody. But I don't see that, that's like in a fight or in an altercation or, I don't know, you get in a car accident and you jump out of the car and beat up the guy that bumped into it. It was just, some people are more prone to that, I think. But it's like you're not seeing anything but red, and you're in that moment, you're going to do what you're going to do, and nobody's going to stop you. That to me would be something that would be
let's say it's an intent to kill, shooting you right in the heart, right in the chest. Or into the heart. What's the difference between the person that can be made in that instance?
What's the difference if I have an intent to shoot him right in the heart?
Let's say you have the intent to kill when you pull the trigger.
Did second-degree murder say an intent to kill?
Second-degree murder has to be intentional act. And after that, it's a second-degree murder.
But is it defined as intentionally with an intent to kill someone, or just intent to kill? Well, then it'd be hard. I would really like to look at the two laws and look at it further. Hard for me to make a decision.
And another gentleman mentioned that with this, you're going to have, well, not just that, not this book, but yes, you would be able to compare the two laws side by side to see what you brought back. You could get better.
Yeah, I'm not. I want to remember the difference.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sorry. Mr. Wilder.
I wanted to bring up a point, going back to witness, the difference in testimony between the witnesses and the credibility that you were alluding to. One of the things that a couple of folks have touched on, but really haven't said it specifically, is the relevance of that discrepancy. For instance, I'm issued a speeding ticket, and the officer gives me the ticket at 6 p.m. It's written on the ticket. You get the dash cam, clearly shows 6 a.m. Is that relevant to the fact that I was doing 60 and a 45?
You tell me.
No. Well, in that case. But I guess it's what we also need to look at besides the testimony is the relevance of the discrepancy.
How much does it really matter with the discrepancy? That's what you're saying, right?
Well, yes, the relevance would control how much weight I give to that discrepancy, yeah.
Just to flush this out a little bit, let's say back in our one magnitude event, okay? The case is a burglary of a house. One magnitude was burglarized. One person says one magnitude was painted white. One person says one magnitude was painted beige. Is it relevant to burglary?
In this case, no, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the defendant, thank you for indulging me in the process. No need to continue. We're going to give a jury. If I don't think you guys done, thank you very much.
Thank you, folks. We're winding down. I'm obligated under the law to let this clock back at all. Address y'all briefly. Chief.
I'm just going to come back to you, Mr. Ryberg. Do you remember basically what the theme of jury selection was when I started with you guys a few days ago?
As far as
What your job is?
my job,
Yeah.
yes,
Follow the law?
yes.
And you asked Mr. Glenn about this issue of second-degree murder, and you raised an excellent point. You asked about intent. And I'd like to read you the last part of that instruction. And here's what it said. In order to convict a second-degree murder, it's not necessary for the state to prove the defendant had an intent to cause death. Okay? Now, who's going to tell you what the law is in this case?
It's just right.
And so what the lawyers say about the law, you can accept is not the law, correct?
Yes.
Mr. Graffinino, you raised the bar fight, right? I always got to get the last word. You can ask people who know me. That's why I'm a prosecutor. You raised the issue of the bar fight. There's two things of law I want to talk to you about, and I'm sitting down, I swear. First thing is, the law will instruct you, if you return a verdict of guilt, in this case, it should be for the highest offense, which has been proven beyond a reasonable doubt. You with me?
Yes, sir.
So when we start talking about these lesser included offenses and so forth, the law is you must convict for the highest offense we've proven. You understand that?
Yes, sir.
And the point being that for some of you who are going to sit on this juror who may not have particularly strong feelings in favor of the death penalty, I want to make sure, and I'm not saying that's you, I'm just speaking, okay, that decision on what to convict the defendant of is not made based upon what if, the second phase, if you will. You follow what I'm saying?
I understand.
The law says you must convict for the highest offense. Can you do that?
Yes, sir.
Let's go back to your bar fight, because I think that's excellent. First of all, guess what you're going to hear during the course of this trial? Yes. Facts. That's right. Somebody said it. You're going to hear real facts. Now, in your bar fight scenario, if we know nothing other than we're standing here and we watch two people engage in a conversation, one of whom grabs a Bud Light bottle and whacks Mr. Eisenhower over the head. And Mr. Eisenhower dies. Could that be second-degree murder? Maybe. That's all the information we know. Maybe not. Now, let me add a fact, because facts are kind of important, Mr. Graffinino. Now you find out that it turns out Mr. Eisenhower, within the last few weeks, stole some cash from me. Or at least I think he stole some cash from me. Right? And now I'm in a fight at a bar with Mr. Eisenhower, and I hit him over the head with a bottle. Is that second-degree murder? Maybe. Maybe not. Could it be premeditated murder? Maybe. Maybe not. You don't have a lot of what? Oh, facts. Interesting. Now, you find out that Mr. Eisenhower has stolen a considerable, I think, he stole a considerable sum of money from me. Enough so that perhaps I can't feed my family or I can't make my mortgage payment. And I see Mr. Eisenhower at a bar. And I approach him from behind. And I tap him on the shoulder. And when he turns, I smash the bottle on the table and I stick it directly in his throat. Now, the totality of those facts might tell you something. Would you agree?
Yes, sir.
You going to listen to the facts, Mr. Graffinino?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Folks, we're going to let y'all take a quick break. If I could have y'all.
Yeah.
Let me hit it quick. here in the hallway for just use a couple of that talk and then go back.
Look at those shoes. Aren't those nice?
Come on, you want to be a
I'm
star
very
too.
careful what I do with my telephone.
Now, Mr. Glenn, you know you're going to be a star in the show here. You and Stanley know each other?
From, through the years.
Being around.
How you doing? Good, honey.
How are you doing? Important.